FERPA training for employees. Grand Island Public Schools. Annual Notice of FERPA Rights. Grand Island Public Schools recognizes the importance of maintaining student records and preserving confidentiality. Confidentiality of personally identifiable information in educational records shall be maintained in accordance with FERPA. What is FERPA? FERPA is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. It is a federal law that protects the confidentiality of student educational records. It applies to all schools that receive federal funding. What are educational records? Educational records are records that are directly related to a student and maintained by an educational agency or institution. Has FERPA ever been altered? Yes, FERPA was altered twice since first passed in the 1970s, creating exceptions to share information in students' records with vendors without parents' consent. Who should have access to student data? No one should have access to the data of their students except parents, students, and third-party providers. An example of a third-party provider is a surveillance camera company. Surveillance in schools. Cameras are a cornerstone of school safety and security plans. More than 80% of public schools and more than 94% of high schools used security cameras during the 2015-2016 school year. FERPA, surveillance cameras, and the Fourth Amendment. The Fourth Amendment prohibits governmental entities from conducting unreasonable searches. Courts have considered whether surveillance recordings violate the Fourth Amendment. The courts have decided that if the camera is in a public place, it does not violate the Fourth Amendment. But if it is in a non-public place, such as a bathroom, then it does violate the Fourth Amendment. Do parents get access to surveillance recordings? Parents must have a surveillance recording disclosed to them if it is directly related to the student and is maintained by the educational institution. Does law enforcement get access to surveillance recordings? Unless the recording is created and maintained by a school's law enforcement unit, schools are prohibited from disclosing such recordings without written consent from parents and students to whom the recording directly relates. Third-party providers. Third-party providers must abide by the same laws a school lives by when protecting students' data. Schools must hold vendors to this and must ensure their vendors have appropriate safeguards in place. Are there other exceptions to FERPA? Yes, there are other exceptions to FERPA. Examples of exceptions would be if there is a risk to health and safety. Such exceptions include violent crimes and sexual offenses. Is immigration status an exception? No. Under federal law, state and local agencies are required to provide all children with equal access to public education at the elementary and secondary levels. Student enrollment practices that may chill or discourage the participation or lead to the exclusion of students based on their or their parents' or guardians' actual or perceived citizenships or immigration status contravene federal law. What about COVID being an exception? In the event of epidemic disease outbreak, a school can legally share students' education records with designated personnel and law enforcement officers. What is Grand Island Senior High doing to ensure that we are FERPA compliant? There are 8 things we can do, and you can help. Raise FERPA awareness. We can confirm that FERPA applies to us. Know the rights, protections, and expectations. Choose compliant vendors. Train all school employees. Implement compliant policies and procedures. Encrypt files and emails. Implement other prevention tools, such as case management software. Some unintentional violations of FERPA. We can violate FERPA by throwing student documents away without shredding them. Shred all student documents. If a vendor misuses students' education records, the school can still be at fault. We must carefully screen vendors. Educators must be careful on social media. Posting on social media can potentially violate FERPA. How data is destroyed. Clear, purge, destroy. Clear is a method of sanitation that applies programmatic software-based techniques to sanitize data for protection against simple, non-invasive data recovery techniques. Purge is a method of sanitization that applies physical or logical techniques that render target data recovery infeasible using state-of-the-art laboratory techniques. Destroy is a method of sanitization that renders target data recovery infeasible using state-of-the-art laboratory techniques and results in the subsequent inability to use the media for storage of data. Tips for parents. Always question why the information is being requested. Ask for a copy of the district policy on surveys, videotaping of students, and third-party access. Let your children know they can opt out of surveys. Review your child's education record periodically. Ask to see the access log for education records of your child. Document any confidentiality breach in writing. What should parents do if they feel FERPA rights have been violated? If parents or eligible students believe that their rights under FERPA have been violated, they may file a formal complaint with the Department of Education.